Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I thought today we'd have a go at this nice sunset painting. If you're confident enough, paint along with me. If not, sit down, enjoy, and let's get started. So to get started, I'm just using the Bob Ross 2-inch brush, and I've dipped it into a tiny amount of yellow. Only just tap the ends of the bristles into the colour, you don't need a lot whatsoever. Smallest amount you can get away with, and just start doing crisscross strokes all the way across the canvas. Don't go any lower down than halfway, and blend it slightly upwards until you start running out of paint. Using the exact same 2-inch brush and the exact same colour, just come slightly underneath what you've just done in the sky, and instead of doing crisscross strokes, what we're going to do is just go straight across, back and forward, and that's going to be part of the yellow water reflection. Just keep messing about with this until you're happy with it. You don't want too much colour, you can always add more if you need it, but you just want it so there's a slight yellow tint. Using the exact same 2-inch brush, and I've not washed it yet, I've just gone straight into a tiny amount of Alizarin crimson. You only need to tap it in just same as before, very small amount of colour, and just work your way doing crisscross strokes once again, just above the yellow and down the sides. You can come down so you can touch the yellow slightly if you wish, but this is going to be blended in a little while anyway. The main thing is not to apply too much colour at once. Just keep doing this until you're happy with it, and work your way up to just before you get to the corners. Just keep adding a bit more colour as and when you want it, just as I'm doing here, and just keep going over it until you're happy with it, bearing in mind that we are going to blend it a little while in a bit, so you don't need to get it absolutely perfect at this stage. I'm just stepping back quite often, seeing where it needs a bit more colour, and I'm just adding it as I go. Now then, using the exact same 2-inch brush again, I've tapped into a tiny bit more alizarin crimson, and this is where we're going to put the crimson into the water as a reflection. This time we're going to go from the outside of the canvas inwards, so I'm starting from the right hand side and drag it inwards. This is so that you don't get any harsh lines on the inside, which can be quite difficult to blend out at times if the colour's quite strong. If you end up like that, where there's not too much colour in places, just keep adding a bit to your brush and then keep just dragging it in from the side until you're happy with it. Work your way up to slightly up from the bottom, so it's darker at the bottom as you work your way up, and just drag it so it just touches the yellow. Once again, I've tapped into a bit more colour, and we're going to do the exact same thing again, but from the other side. So I'm starting from the bottom, and I'm dragging from the outside in, so from the left hand side inwards. And we're going to work our way up, so that we'll go right next to the yellow. You can even go over the yellow a little bit if you wish. And just work your way up until you meet the sky halfway up the canvas, like so. Keep adding the paint as you wish, but you want to start with the smallest amount possible and add to it a little bit at a time, because on these base colours we don't want much colour at all, as we're going to be going over it afterwards. Once again, using the exact same 2-inch brush, and I've still not washed it, I've just dipped into a tiny amount of phthalo blue. The crimson was still on the brush, so when you tap into a small amount of blue it will turn into this lavender purplish colour, which is perfect for the top of the sky. Start in the top right corner and work your way down. That way the top corner is the darkest amount. Work your way over to the left and then reload your brush, starting in the left corner to make that darker. Once again, work your way down. If you want it slightly more to the blue side, add a bit more blue, or if you want it to the purple side, just keep it as it is like that, the smallest amount possible. We're still on the same 2-inch brush, guys. We've not changed brushes or washed it yet. So all I've done is gone into a bit more of that colour. And once again, we're going to put some reflections in the water, or what will be water. Start again from the outside in. Try not to go too far to the left this time. Leave some of the pink showing. And once again, start at the bottom and work your way up, just as I'm doing here. You will run out of paint as you get further upwards. However, you can always add a little bit if you need to. And looking at that, I will need to. Just keep doing that, work your way up to the middle, and then you'll be all good to go. This is the same 2-inch brush, however, I've now cleaned it. It's clean and dry, and what we're doing is going to start and blend the sky. So what I've done, I've started in between the pink and the yellow. We're doing some crisscross strokes. We start from the lightest area, which is that part, and we're going to slowly work our way up the sky and I'll blend the whole lot, especially where the colours meet, because we don't want to see where the colours meet. We want it to blend seamlessly, so there's no harsh lines or anything like that. So I'm working my way up, as you can see. I'm now in between the pink and the blue, and it's just going to bring the two colours together nicely. Work your way all the way up to the top corners, as you can see, just to blend out any obvious brush strokes, and then the colours will look nice and smooth. Once again, I'm using the 2-inch brush. I've cleaned it once again. It's clean and dry. I'm going to start in the yellow, which is the brightest part, and we're going to go across into the pink all the way down, and then as you can see, we're going to do the whole lot nice and lightly. You don't want to press on at this point because we don't want to drag too much purple over into the yellow. Just go all the way across, backwards and forwards, work your way down, just to bring all the colours together nicely. I've now picked up a Bob Ross number 6 fan brush, and I've dragged it through a large amount of titanium white. This paint's really thick, so you need lots on there to get it off, and it should stick over your sky, as the colours should be nice and thin. This is where the application of this white paint needs to be really thick so it sticks over and we can blend it. What you need to do for clouds is create small circular motions and keep the brush moving. So start from one side of your canvas and work to the other side. So I'm now doing the right hand side. I'm doing circles, small circles, and going up and down. Keep the brush moving at all times, just to create them lovely nice fluffy cloud shapes. Reload your brush as you need to, bearing in mind you will pick up a small amount of colour as you go. I've now picked up a clean and dry 1-inch brush, and I'm just coming underneath the cloud. I'm doing circular strokes yet again. However, I'm pressing very lightly and I'm just doing the underneath of the cloud. I'm not touching the top whatsoever. This is just to blend the underneath of the cloud into the sky before we do his main blend afterwards. And then once you've done your circular strokes blend to blend the underneath of the cloud, just go across the whole thing just like that, backward and forward. You want to do this very lightly, with as light a touch as possible, and not too many times, because otherwise you'll just blend your cloud right into your sky and it'll disappear. Just a few times, nice and lightly, and then that'll push that cloud back into the sky. You can create as many of these clouds as you want. As you can see, I picked up the fan brush again, the same one, using the same colour, and I'm just doing another cloud and putting it underneath the one that I've just blended. It's important to do them one at a time really, because once you've blended the first cloud, you can then add the other one underneath without disturbing the one above it. Just remember, nice circular strokes, keep the brush moving. You can go in any direction that you want. The main thing is just to keep those circles moving. Once again, using the 1-inch brush, I'm just blending the bottom of the cloud out. Just nice circular strokes, nice and lightly. I'm not touching the top of that cloud again. I want to keep them nice fluffy edges. I'm just blending the bottom so that it disappears into the sky. Once you've done this, just go straight across the whole cloud, nice and lightly, not too many times, and then that will blend it and push it right back into the sky. Excellent. I've now got a Bob Ross palette knife, and I've mixed up a colour of black, brown, green, blue and crimson. Mixing these together should create a nice dark colour that's suitable for mountains. Just put a straight edge of paint on the edge of the knife and then create a mountain shape by pushing in quite hard and just dragging it down into slight triangular shapes. You can make it as easy or as complicated as you want, but if you're just starting out, I would recommend just no more than 2 peaks on the mountain. This one's a little bit more complicated than that, but as you can see, it is quite easy to do and it just takes practice. You can mess with the mountain and adjust it to any basic shape that you want. I wasn't happy with that shape, so I've just gone a little bit higher, got rid of that peak and just added a smaller one in, as you can see, and then I can work my way down from there. Once you're happy with the shape of your mountain, you want to get a clean knife and just scrape down the largest amount of paint that you can, just get rid of all the excess. At this point I'm scraping really hard and I'm wanting to just get rid of all the excess paint because it's going to make it even easier for when we do a snow, which is coming up next. For this part I'm using a 1-inch brush, but you can use the 2-inch if you like. As long as it's clean and dry, then you should be good to go. Just put it underneath the top of the mountain, try not to go over the edge, and just bring the colour down and drag it to the sides just to create your mountain. This should be achievable because we put a coat of the liquid white on before we started, and this enables the paint to be able to move as freely as you can see here. This not only helps get rid of the excess paint, but as you can see, as you drag the colour down it gets slightly lighter, and this is again due to the liquid white we've got on there, creating quite a misty look without even trying. This step is quite optional. You don't need to do it. It does depend on whether you're a new painter or you've never picked up a brush before. This step will make it slightly easier. All I'm doing here is using a crunched up paper towel, and I'm just getting rid of the last remnants of paint that's left on the underneath of the mountain. There's not much paint on it anyway, but by doing this step it's going to allow the snow to stick so much easier once we get that part on the mountain. Just drag it down and just pick up all the excess paint. It doesn't matter what it looks like or whether it creates patches, because it's going to be covered anyway. Using the Bob Ross palette knife and a small amount of titanium white paint that I put on as a roll on the edge of the knife blade, I'm just starting at the top of the peak of the mountain and just pulling it down, no pressure whatsoever. You don't want to press on doing this, because you want the paint to break so it looks like snow. Start at the top and just work your way down nice and slowly to begin with. Reload as you need to, but the main thing is not to press on. If you don't press on, you'll be able to create all these nice holes into the paint, which will make it look like mountain snow. Hold the knife blade at a rough 45-degree angle to the canvas. If you hold it flat on, you'll get a big blob of paint that starts at the top, and you don't want that. You want it to be nice and even all the way down. As you can see, all the highlights, which is the white snow, is coming down the right hand side of the mountain, because in my mind that's where the light's going to be striking in this painting. You'll usually find if you're a right-hander that it's normally easier to highlight your mountains from the right hand side. It just seems to be easier to manage, but try both ways, especially if you're a left-hander. Try both ways and see which works for you. So as you can see, we're going to join onto that one. Some more paint, we're going to come slightly down and curve it round, and then we can fill in the underneath with paint once again. Make sure there's no pressure, just drag it down without pressing on, and you'll get that lovely snowy effect in the paint. And this is the reason, guys, why we made sure to get rid of all the excess paint underneath, because getting rid of all the darker paint, or as much of it as we can, especially with the paper towel, it's allowing the paint just to do this, just to break up into nice little holes, and it looks just like snow on a mountain. On these other peaks on the left hand side, I'm just going to do a slight stroke, just so it's only a little bit. I'm not going to go all the way across, and you're going to see why in a moment. But basically I want those peaks to be pushed into the background of the mountain. So now I'm going to do the shadow colour. So I've just added a small amount of phthalo blue to the white. We're going to do the same thing again, but go the other way. So this time we're working from right to left on the mountain. So start under your peak, again no pressure, and then as we drag it down we're going to go past the white peak and drag it all the way through, and that'll push that back, as you can see. And we're going to do that all the way up. If you need to squeeze into a small space as I'm doing here, you can always use the small edge of the knife in exactly the same way. It just allows you to get into those little crevices. And all we need to do now is fill in the rest of the mountain with the shadow colour, and there's only this one peak left, so we're just going to go again from right to left and just fill it in. No pressure whatsoever. We still want the holes because it is still snow after all. It's just on the shadow side, and just drag it down, work your way down, and then we're all good to go. Using a clean dry 1-inch brush, I want to create some mist at the bottom of this mountain. So I'm just going to start tapping nice and gently from right to left, as that's the way that the snow's flowing, in that direction. And then as we work our way towards the centre, we're going to go slightly more upright, and then when we get to the left of the mountain, we're going to go from the other direction, as you'll see. So this way we're going down that way. We're following the peaks basically of the mountain. So I'm tapping nice and gently just underneath, probably the bottom quarter of the mountain. We don't want to go too high up, as you can see. And then finally, just using the same brush, just slide upwards towards the top of the mountain, as you can see, but we're only actually at the bottom quarter, just to basically get rid of the brush strokes and create the nice mist in the snow. Do this very lightly, otherwise you're just going to mush the snow into the back of the mountain and it won't look right. You just want some slight mist. And then just go back and forth doing crisscross strokes right at the bottom, just to get rid of any remaining harsh lines and just make it as misty as possible. Using the number 6 fan brush, I've mixed up like a mucky green colour. I've mixed up green, black, brown and a bit of white just to make a distant green colour. I didn't want it too dark because these are distant trees, so they need to be quite light. Load the fan brush quite well, and then as you can see I'm just tapping downwards just to create those distant tree lines, making sure that the heights are all different because otherwise it'll end up looking like fence posts and we don't want that. Make sure to try and leave some mist showing in the background. As you can see, there's slight yellow mist showing between the trees, and that will separate the mountain and the trees and it won't look like they're right up against the mountain. It just gives you more depth in your painting. Using a clean and dry 1-inch brush, I'm just going to tap quite hard into the bottom of the trees just to create a misty effect basically. Just clean your brush off nice and often, tap in quite hard, and then with the paint that's already on there it'll all mush together and create this misty effect. That's because the liquid white that's on there will help the paint move and it'll lighten it, making it look distant. Starting underneath the misty area of the trees, I've now gone back to the 2-inch brush. I'm using the same colour, but I've just added in a bit more black and brown because this part is basically blocking in as land. As long as it's nice and dark, then we're good to go. So just tap a load of paint onto your brush and then just tap and go to the right and just basically create the land how you want it. You can have a steeper hill than that, you can have it less steep, you can do it however you like. But with me, I just want to come underneath the mountain, leaving some misty parts showing, and quite often I'm going to step back and have a look, see how it looks, and then adjust accordingly. But as of now, I'm just basically blocking in dark colour, so at this point you can't go wrong. After stepping back and having a little look, I've decided to come a bit further up, as there's too much of that mist showing. I just want to come a bit higher up towards the trees, so I'm just basically blocking it in like that and making the hills less severe. Just reload your brush as and when you need to, and just work your way down, just tapping in all the land that you want. If you're going to be using water like I am today, I'm going to make sure that the land goes downhill towards the water, because water, especially if it's still water, is always in a recessed area like a valley, or it's always lower down basically than what the land is, as it will always settle at the lowest point. So just keep reloading your brush and tap away, and just tap your land downhill on each side towards your water, as I'm doing here. As you can see, I've now decided to create a separate hill, so I'm just working my way down now slowly, just like that. And you can shape this however you want yours to be. This is basically me just showing you how the technique works. After stepping back a little bit and having another look, I've decided where I want my land to go, so I'm just doing a quick outline sketch like that. I want it to work its way down diagonally, and then I'm just going to fill that in. And exactly the same on the other side. After having a quick look, I'm just going to sketch in where I want the edge of the land to be, just like so. And then I'm just going to fill that in afterwards. And as you can see, we've now got a nice bit of land that we can work with. and it's pretty obvious where the water is, and it all looks pretty good at this point. I just want to create a distant reflection with the 1-inch brush. I'm just going to grab some of that colour that's already on and just drag it down. I don't need to add much colour at all, if any. Just drag it down, as like so. The liquid white allows you to do this, it allows the paint to move. Just down in straight lines, and then you'll need to go across just to create that distant reflection, like so. I've now got another number 6 fan brush. I've loaded it with that same dark colour that I've used for the land. I'm going to create some evergreen tree, so I'm just tapping in the stem of the tree, like so. Reload, use plenty of paint, and start at the top with the corner of the brush only. Just some small taps, and then as you work your way down, you want to start tapping a little bit harder and using slightly more of the brush. Take your time when you do this, but as you go down, you want the tapping to get wider, and you do that by tapping harder, and just go down as far as you want to. I'm going to be putting in quite a few of these evergreen trees in this painting. With it being a large canvas, I've got quite a large space to cover, but they're all created in exactly the same way. You can do some taller, as I'm going to do here. This one's going to be taller. You can do some shorter, wider, skinnier, but they're all created in exactly the same way. Just start at the top, use the corner of the brush only, very small taps to start, leave bits of a gap, and then as you work your way down, you want to be going from left to right, tapping slightly harder and using slightly more of the brush as you work your way down. Don't be scared to reload your brush, reload as often as necessary, especially if your trees are quite large. When you're doing these trees, don't be scared to add some in that are like slightly crooked or bent to one side. It just makes your painting look more interesting. You don't want every single tree to be stood up perfectly vertical and look perfectly symmetrical. Just try and vary it, vary the heights, vary the sizes, etc., and it will look much more realistic. as you can see, we've got another crooked tree in here, but it's created in the same way. Just tap in the stem of the tree and then just add the brush strokes in for the leaves afterwards. If when you're doing your trees, you go over your mountain and you find that your paint's struggling to stick, just add a small amount of paint thinner to your brush, and I mean a tiny amount. That should thin the paint slightly, and it should then stick over the thick paint that you've got on your mountain. Just while I'm finishing these trees off on this side, guys, if you do like these videos, you enjoy watching along, just please ensure to give us a thumbs up. That'll help us push this video out to more people to watch. And if you want to subscribe, that'll also help me out quite a bit. And also feel free to share this video with friends and family. The more people that like these videos and eventually want to learn how to possibly do it or whatnot, that'd be absolutely brilliant. What I'd also like to add is, feel free to leave any comments that you wish in the comments box below. Whether you want to just let me know what you think or what you'd like to see. I've got many more videos coming. We're going to be going in depth with certain elements of this technique. We're going to be doing some more full length tutorials like this one. We're going to be doing all sorts, and if there's anything you'd like to see or that you'd want to put forward, or even if you've got any questions that you want to ask or anything, just leave a comment or contact me via Facebook and whatnot. All the details to how to contact me will be in the video description, as well as all the equipment and brushes, etc., and paint colours that I'm using in this video. It's all going to be down there for you. Using a 2-inch brush, I just want to add a quick reflection into this land, just so I know where it ends up. To do that, you just drag a bit of colour down, the same colour that's on the land there. Just drag it down in a straight line and then just go across nice and gently, and that'll create a nice shimmering reflection. And now we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Just drag it down in a straight line, add a tiny bit of colour if you need to, or just borrow some colour that's on the land there. Drag it down in a straight line, and then once you've done that, just go straight across, and you need to go straight across in a straight line, not upwards or downwards, and that'll create a reflection on the other side. So right now we're going to do the exact same thing with the trees on the right hand side, and we're going to do it now on this left hand side just to fill in this side of the canvas. So I'm using the same dark colour that we've mixed up, the same fan brush, and we're going to do the same types of trees, albeit different sizes and heights. I don't want it to look identical to the other side. So we'll just start off by doing the stem, just tapping the line, and that'll help to guide you down. Start with the corner of the brush, small taps, and then work your way down. Once again, while you're going over the mountain, which has got the thick snow paint on it, if you find that it's struggling to stick, just dip the corner of your brush into a small amount of paint thinner, and I mean a tiny amount. Do that, go back into your paint, that'll just loosen it a little bit, and you should find it should stick a lot better over your mountain. All of these evergreens are created in exactly the same way. So all you need to do is just watch carefully what I'm doing. You don't have to use the fan brush if you don't want to. You can do these trees exactly the same way with the 1 inch and even the 2 inch brush. It just depends how you want them to look. I just find the fan brush gives you that little bit more detail, whereas the other brushes will give you a thicker, more bushy look. We'll just finish off this side now with this good looking little tree coming up, and that should cover that corner for us, and then we can start working on the highlights and the land area. Using the palette knife, I've just mixed up two colours. I've mixed up the titanium white and I've mixed up burnt sienna, which is the light brown colour. I've mixed them not very well to a marbled appearance, just so there's different colours happening. I've put a small roll of this paint onto the edge of the knife and I'm just touching the tree in the centre in certain places. I'm touching and then dragging slightly to the left as I let go, just so the paint comes off. And I'm just creating the centre stems of the trees. I'm creating those only in certain places because in real life, when you've got all the leaves and whatnot, you can't always see the entirety of the stem. So just touch in certain places on your trees where you want it to be, and then we can go from there. I'm now going to create the highlights for the trees, and I'm going to be using a fan brush, as that's the same brush we used to make the dark colour in the first place. And I've just added some yellow and green to the brush, and this is where it's important to make sure the colour that you're using to highlight is really thin. So what I've done is I've mixed these two colours, the green and yellow, with liquid white. The liquid white is really good at making the colours thinner and looser, and then that colour should stick on top of the thick dark colour that you've used on your tree. It'll stop it creating mud basically, but you still don't want to press on hard. You just want to go over your tree, just tap it in like you did your tree before, and because the light source is coming from the right, as the mountain tells us, I want more of these green highlights to appear on the right of these trees, making sure that I'm leaving plenty of dark areas as well, because we need that contrast. So the main important points of highlighting trees: make sure you leave plenty of dark areas, and make sure that the paint is a lot thinner than what you've used to make the tree. So from now on in, all the paint we're going to be using is going to be much thinner, as we're going to be highlighting the trees and also the land. So now we're going to start highlighting the trees on this side of the canvas. Now, because the trees we've just done We put the majority of the highlights on the right hand side of those trees, with the light coming in from the right. On these trees, as you can see with the sunset, we're going to now highlight these trees but put most of the colour on the other side of the tree, or the left hand side of these trees. That way it's going to show up much better where the light's hitting them from. I've now picked up the Bob Ross round brush, and what we're going to be doing with this one is creating some bushes. So to create some bushes, I've used pretty much the same colour that we've used for the highlights in the trees, but I've just added a bit more yellow so it just is a bit brighter and it stands out a bit more. So to create a bush, the paint also needs to be thin. So I've mixed up the green and yellow, added a bit more yellow and also liquid white to make it as thin as possible. I've just tapped the brush in, and then with a light touch, you don't press on hard at all, you just tap in like a clock face, so 12 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then start at the other side of the bush, so 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, etc. And just work your way around in a circular motion. The main thing is leave plenty of dark areas between your bushes and don't press on hard at all, otherwise the paint will just mix with the land underneath and create mud. So all you want is a light touch, a lot of paint. If you start to run out of paint, don't press on harder. Make sure you reload your brush often and tap as lightly as possible and the paint should come off lovely. As I work my way across the canvas with these bushes, we're going to be into more shadowy areas. So I've just adjusted the colour and I've just added a little bit more green to the brush. And these bushes I'm just going to do in exactly the same way. It's just that the colour is going to be slightly darker, just to represent the fact that not as much light will be getting down to these ones. Just remember the main thing, leave plenty of dark areas between your bushes, don't press on hard, keep your brush loaded up well and make sure the paint is nice and thin by regularly dipping it into some liquid white or even some paint thinner if you want, but if you use paint thinner, only a tiny bit because it's really strong. Now let's create a few bushes on this side as well. I've just adjusted the colour slightly just so it's not identical to the ones on the opposite side, and because I don't want it to look the same I'm not going to put as many on this side and in a slightly different position. However, when you're doing yours, feel free to do your bushes whatever colour and in what area you like. It's your painting, you'll do what you want with yours. You don't have to copy me specifically. I'm just showing you how this technique works and what you need to do to achieve the effects that I'm getting here. Right, so let's get started on doing some grass, I think. What I'm done is I've used the same colour as the bushes, some green and yellow, and once again I've dipped the 1-inch brush this time I'm using into a bit of liquid white just to thin the paint, because we're highlighting over this thick dark paint. And all I'm doing is tapping nice and gently, just backwards and forwards, reloading as I need to. But what you need to do with grass is, once you start tapping, allow your brush to run out of paint so it gets darker and darker. And then once you reload and then you start a new section, it's going to look like a new plane in your painting. It's going to look like hills, as you'll see in a moment. So I'm just going over that part there, just to brighten it up that little bit. And I'm going to work my way down, allowing the paint to get darker due to that underpaint. And let it slightly run out of paint as I keep going down. Just tap nice and gently, you don't need to tap hard whatsoever. Just like that, starting to run out of paint. And then I'm going to reload the brush. And then once I start back into the painting, because the new brush load here is going to be brighter with the fresh paint, as you can see, it's going to look like a distant hill due to the contrast between the darker paint of what we've just used and the brighter paint of what I'm just applying now. You want to do this all the way down. Reload your brush, allow it to run out of paint. Make sure you also angle your brush so that your grass is going down towards the water, not in a straight line or going uphill. Make sure it's going down towards the water. And then once you run out of paint, just reload, start slightly underneath, and it'll look like distant hills, and you've not even tried, basically. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. We're just going to angle the brush down towards the water. Start tapping nice and gently with a full loaded brush. And then as you work your way down, as you can see, the paint's getting nice and dark. So I'm going to reload the brush. And then once I get back to the canvas with a fresh brush load, start where the dark area is, just there. And then that's going to start a new section of grass, and it's going to look like it's a new hill, which adds, again, depth to your painting and makes it look more realistic, more three-dimensional, and it's just more pleasing on the eye. Also, feel free to mess about with your grass colour if you want. So as you can see, I've got slightly brighter yellows and I've got darker greens. Just put it where you want it, but having a variety of colours in your grass just makes it look more pleasing to the eye. Just using that same grass colour, I'm just going to create some reflections above the ones we've already done. So I'm just going to grab my 1-inch brush again and just drag down some of that green colour in a straight line, as you can see. I'm going to do also the same on the other side, and it's just basically creating the green highlights in the reflections just to make it look a lot better. So remember, just pull down in a straight line, just like so, and it's going to make your reflections stand out a lot more. I'm going to do the front as well. This will be even brighter because that's, in my mind, that's where the light's going to beat in the most. So I'm just doing these reflections slightly brighter, but again, I'm just putting a tiny amount of paint on the 1-inch brush, dragging it in a straight line down, and then afterwards we'll be going across. Brighten it up as and where you want it, so I want to add a bit more there, so I'm just adding it as I go. Just however you want it. If you want it to look more greener, add more green. But personally, I like to leave quite a bit of darkness in as well, just for that contrast. Using the Bob Ross palette knife, I've just loaded a small amount of dark brown, only dark brown, onto the edge of the knife. I'm just going onto the edge of the grass where the land meets the water. I'm just pulling in a diagonal fashion, just from the grass, edge of the grass, up to the water, just to create separation of a bit of land, and we're going to put some mud there as well, just to basically separate the water from the grass. Now we'll just do the same on the other side. Again, small amount of dark brown. I'm just touching and dragging a small amount towards the water just to create a bit of land between the grass and the water where it meets. On the same palette knife, I've just added some white and burnt sienna. I've mixed it to a marbled appearance, and I'm just dragging it above that dark brown very lightly, and as you can see, the paint comes off and it looks a bit like mud or rocks or something like that. It just adds a nice muddy highlight to that land, and it just separates it from the water and makes it look top notch. Just needs to do the same thing all the way around. Just reload, try not to mix the paint too well, make sure it's a marbled, so you've got bits of brown, bits of white, bits of everything in it, and just drag the knife across very, very lightly and do it all the way around so it creates a nice bit of land. I'm now just touching up the grassy areas here and there, and I'm just pulling some grass over the edge of that land where the brown is that I've just put on, and it just means that it's not a neat separation. It looks like there's some overgrown grass that's growing over the land area. I've just noticed that I needed to touch these reflections up a little bit, so I'm just dragging down with the brush and just going to go in across, which I forgot to do earlier, just to create that shimmering reflection look, and I'll do the same on the other side as well. Just using the palette knife again, I've cleaned it off all the old paint, and I've just added a tiny roll of liquid white on the end, and I'm just going to push it in parallel where in between the water and the land area. I'm just going to push it back and forward a bit like a saw, left and right, just to create some very thin water lines, just to create a bit of water separation. Just as a final bit of highlight for the land, I've just got myself a 1-inch brush, a clean dry one. I've just added some alizarin crimson mixed with white and some liquid white as well to soften the paint. And I'm just adding some distant small pink bushes here and there just to brighten up the land area and basically finish off the land part of the painting altogether. Just a few highlights. I've just quickly grabbed a filbert brush and I'm going to create just some rocks in the water. So all I've done for that is I've mixed up dark brown on its own, and then I've also mixed up white and dark sienna as a separate pile. I've dragged both sides of the brush through the dark brown, and then through on one side of the brush I've just dragged it through the lighter mixture, and all I'm doing is doing a curved motion in the water, just like that, just as and where I want them, and I'm just adding a few rocks in the water just to add a bit of dimension to that part of the painting. All I'm doing here is just dragging down a bit of the brown paint from each rock just to create a shadow colour in the water, and after this I'll be adding some water lines in between the rocks just to separate each rock from its shadow colour. And here we are with the water lines, exactly the same way we created them before. It's just the palette knife with a small amount of liquid white on the end, and all I'm doing is cutting into the canvas and pulling it from side to side just to create a thin line that represents a water line to separate the rock from the shadow. After just stepping back and having a quick look, I've just found a couple of places I wouldn't mind adding a couple of those distant pink bushes. So I'm just adding them in now. That's why it's important, guys, to step back and look at your painting quite often, because quite often you will see places where things are missing, where you could do with adding something just to make it look more pleasing to you. Right, so as one of the final steps on this one, I'm just going to create a distant path in the distance where the grass meets. And I've just got a bit of brown on the filbert brush. I'm just going side to side. That's pretty much all I'm doing. I'm starting off really small in the distance, and as you can see, as we come forward, I've made the strokes slightly wider. All I've done is go from side to side. I've just added a little bit of dark sienna and white, and I'm just adding a small amount of highlight to this path just to brighten it up a little bit, and so I can just step back and see what it looks like. Okay, so I just want to brighten it up a little bit, so I've just added a bit of dark sienna and white onto a palette knife, and I'm just basically, I've put a small line of paint on the edge. I'm using a small edge of the knife and just dragging that paint across the path just to make it look a bit rocky, just to see how it looks. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of that. It's just a bit too bright and in your face, but it's not a problem. All you need to do, just go over it with your filbert brush. Same stroke as before, just backwards and forwards. And the paint that you've put on with the palette knife will stay there, but it'll just dull it down a little bit and just make it a bit neater. Just like that. Using a clean palette knife, no paint on it whatsoever. I'm just scraping in some sticks, twigs and bits of whatnot in between each bush in the dark areas, just to make it look more three-dimensional and just to add a bit of detail. It does look quite nice, this. If you do it on the side of the knife that I'm doing, it gives you some thicker twigs, and if you do it straight up and down like I'm doing now, it gives you some thinner looking sticks and twigs, just depending on what style you prefer. Cheers guys, if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like, a subscribe, leave us a comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.